Cameron Williamson is here, editor-in-chief of Flair magazine. What is so cool is that we hear so much about the fashion weeks around the world. So
Absolutely.
Paris Fashion Week, and you know, we all sit back and think, oh, I wish I could go, but you know, that's never going to happen. He goes, all right?
I go.
He goes to all the shows,
Absolutely.
and we're now going to get a backstage pass.
Absolutely. Backstage and front row.
Backstage and front row. Okay, so let's start in the beginning. Let's start at Dior.
For sure. Okay, so Dior, this probably was the best entrance I've ever seen for a fashion show. They literally took over a courtyard in the Louvre and built a mountain of delphiniums, 400,000 of them, that were planted individually in soil. So, you know, that's pretty amazing. And it took 300 hours to do.
That is amazing. Like, they really go all out. But, you know, the fashion industry is such a huge fuel in the economy that it makes sense to go all out.
Well, it does. And, you know, a company like Dior is one of the biggest luxury companies in the world. So they're really at another level. It's them, Louis Vuitton, Chanel that just go for in terms of the spectacle.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the stars.
All right.
Okay, because you literally bumped into many of them.
So at the Dior show, I was, you know, being huddled towards the entrance, and all of a sudden, right in the center, there's Rihanna. So I snapped this very covert picture of her.
You're very close.
Yes, it was pretty amazing. And, you know, people were going crazy. They were, like, crushing towards her. But she's gorgeous. In person, it's another level of beauty.
Stunning, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes you don't know. You don't know if the camera is really translating. Like, is that what they really look like? Are they covered in makeup? It's a true beauty.
And true beauty. And the thing with Rihanna is everybody says in interviews when they actually see her in person, she's more beautiful. And I would attest to that.
You agree. Okay, well, also in that picture, Janelle Monáe with that amazing braid.
So Janelle Monáe, yeah, she had like a double cornrow kind of situation going on. Yeah. She was in it to win it. She showed up at a number of shows. She was not shy. She was front row and posing.
Okay.
Unlike Janet Jackson.
Okay.
All right, so I'm sitting at the Hermes show.
Yeah.
In the front row, and all of a sudden I turned and I saw a little bit of commotion beside me. And I look over and I'm like, who is that woman with the most amazing full ponytail?
Yeah.
And she's wearing these huge sunglasses, and she's sitting beside her husband, who I recognized him first, actually. And so he's a Qatari billionaire who runs like a fashion empire in the Middle East. And it's Janet Jackson.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I'm like, you know, I'm of the age, I grew up with Janet Jackson. I was obsessed with Rhythm Nation, for sure. Miss Jackson if you're nasty.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was sitting there and I pulled out my iPhone and I just started taking picture after picture of her, and she didn't notice. And the thing that was so interesting, I didn't even notice the clothes. They were nice, but it was all about Janet.
You missed the show.
Yeah.
I love it. That is so cool. And I mean, you're in the front row too, which is pretty cool, Mr. Cameron. Okay, let's talk about these pics we have now from the Chanel show, I believe it is.
Yeah, so Chanel, this was an airport. He turned the Grand Palais, which is this, of course, Paris masterpiece, very old, into an airport with check-in desks, departure and arrival screens. My ticket looked like an airplane ticket, and the clothes were all inspired by travel. So there were things like Chanel sweatsuits and rolly bags, and even one of the dresses was printed with this sort of arrival and departure screen digitized information.
So this is what I need to know. Is it like Toronto Fashion Week in the sense that you get in, the show is about 2 minutes long, and then you get back out?
Well, the thing with Paris Fashion Week, or any of the fashion weeks around the world, it takes about 45 minutes to get everyone seated.
Right.
So a show like Chanel has 2,000 people attending it. It's massive. So it takes a long time. Everyone has to pose for their photos. The best part about Chanel is just seeing the women decked in Chanel head to toe. Because you get the celebs, you get the editors, but you also get the clients.
That's right. But how long is the actual runway show?
Chanel's long, 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
And that's the longest they are. So if you think all that hype, all that money to build this set for 10 minutes.
They built an airport for 10 minutes.
They built an airport for 10 minutes. I always wonder if there's some warehouse out there that's just filled with delphiniums and airplane parts, really.
Like, how do they do that? It's amazing. No idea. Okay, so this trend is scaring the life out of me.
Okay, so
you saw this on a runway.
I did.
Please no.
So this is an old. Okay, so the see-through pants on the right. Yes.
They're see-through pants, guys.
So I kind of just. So this is the Spanish luxury house Loewe, which is actually a 200-year-old leather company, but it's been revived in the last few years, which is happening to a lot of these fashion houses.
Yeah.
I was more interested in that show because as I'm watching the looks go by, I'm like, is that a Canada goose on the top, on the bag? Turns out they used this the peskiest bird in Canada, also one of our national birds, on the clothing.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
They're stealing our bird.
They're stealing our bird, and I think like I was one of the few Canadian editors at the show, so I think I'm the only one that made that connection right away.
Right, like that's ours.
Yeah, and then later in the showroom I went, sometimes you go and you visit the showrooms to get a closer look up at the goods, and there's a big purse there for $3,000, around $3,000, that has a Canada Goose right on it.
Unbelievable.
So I'm like wondering, would you want one of those? Who would want one of those?
Oh, they're going to buy them over in Europe.
There you go.
Whereas we're like, no thanks. And then let's go back to the see-through pants, please, because if this is where things are going, it's going to be slightly worse than a skinny jean for me.
So you always have to remember that on the runway it's always slightly more extreme.
Yeah.
In this case, see-through, and it wasn't just see-through; it was like plastic shower curtain material.
Yeah.
And but it is the effect. Like, so you see that on the runway, and it's the most extreme version. What that trickles down to is it might be like a coat that has a little bit of a transparent part, a little bit of plastic, but I will say that transparency is showing up a lot for spring next year.
Really?
Yes.
Very interesting, and very hard for that not to look sort of cheapy. You got to be careful how you do transparency.
Like, can you imagine wearing a plastic pair of pants? Yeah.
Yes.
You'd have to like Windex yourself every once in a while.
Totally. Okay, let's talk about Toronto Fashion Week, because there were some real standouts there.
So Toronto Fashion Week, this was of course the more recent than the Paris Fashion Week, but I think what was really great about this, and they were showing spring as well, was it really felt on trend with the international collection. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way, and this time it really did. So here we have Sid Nigam, we have Michael Kale, and we have Matthew Gallagher.
Nice.
So on the left is Sid Nigam. He has been collecting award after award of the last few years. He's known for his origami pieces. In this case, he kind of riffed off the idea of a white shirt.
Yeah.
And then we have Matthew Gallagher, who is on the far right that you saw, and he did all of this pastel pinks and blues. And I have the inside scoop that a very prominent Canadian philanthropist slash socialite bought looks right off the runway.
I love it.
Yeah.
Which happens sometimes.
It does.
You know, if you got that cheddar, why not?
Absolutely.
Do you have a hard time picking out what you're going to wear?
Me?
To the shows.
You know, in Paris, you got to step it up. You got to step it up.
Can we talk about that and do a web extra?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's put it online, cityline.ca. We're going to chat during the commercial break.